Much sand has shifted since the last time Carnoustie hosted the greatest championship in the world. The Open was back in this wonderful corner of Angus for the first time in almost a quarter of a century. Golf's ultimate amphitheatre prepared to embrace the game's international gladiators at the last Open of the 1900s.
I think this is the greatest championship in the world, and I love it very dearly. And what happened at Birkdale last year was a dream come true.
The Open Championship, I think, to many of us is the championship of golf. And I'm always excited about it.
I called it your championship back in 1975, and now I call it partly my championship, because I love it so much over here.
Time and the elements have constructed Carnoustie. They were playing golf here before Columbus discovered America. For the 1999 Open, there were abundant quantities of deep rough. Scottish grass is largely unfamiliar with the perfect growing conditions provided by a warm and wet early summer, but that is what Carnoustie got, and the result was a titanic test of golf. The players knew that the challenge they faced would be supreme.
Most of the fairways are really narrow, and the rough is really very, very severe. And if the wind blows here, it's going to be hell out there.
And this was the response from the Royal and Ancient.
If we could grow grass at will like this, then we should have a job in agriculture, because you couldn't buy enough fertilizer to fertilize the areas that are out there. It entirely depends on what the weather is. We never said grow long grass.
Sir Michael Bonalek has been the secretary of the R&A for 17 years. Here he would preside over the prize giving once more before retiring to become captain of the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St Andrews. Having served as one of the top administrators in the game, Sir Michael was not only 5 times British amateur champion, but also led the Open here at Carnoustie back in 1968. No more fitting a venue for the piping out. Elsewhere, another great man was being piped in. The 1st Battalion of the Black Watch struck up for the Black Night.
This is the best part of my week, listening to this band. The best part of the week.
A sprightly Gary player crafted a magnificent victory at Carnoustie in '68, one of 3 Opens for the South African. His feet have felt the turf in 42 consecutive championships, and he couldn't wait to take on Carnoustie, but not until he'd opened the new hotel. And resident there would be a new generation of players. One of the most talked about before the tournament was Sergio Garcia, who was beaten to the silver medal last year by a 17-year-old, Justin Rose, but this year saw an even fresher face. At 16, Zane Scotland became the youngest qualifier since Max Faulkner over 50 years ago. But could a Scot emulate Tommy Armour and win the Carnoustie Open as he did in 1931? This man appeared to have the game to do it.
I know the guy who bought your wife's car.
A great player, but not to be trusted when it comes to selling second-hand automobiles.
Gearbox was gone.
Monty was in a relaxed mood. 1997 Qatar Masters winner Andrew Coulthard had his tartan backers, while Paul Lawrie, with odds as long as Carnoustie itself, had few. Only time would tell what would unfold.
It'll be memorable. Sir Michael Bonalek's Open, if nothing else, will be remembered.
Carnoustie's waiting stopped at 7:15 a.m. In a chill and stiff westerly breeze, Australia's Peter O'Malley struck the first shot, and it was a fellow countryman who made the first impact on the championship. Rodney Pampling had 11 consecutive pars in a level par 71 to lead. Pampling, with only 1 professional victory to his name, said afterwards that he planned to finish in the top 10, but then suffered a second round 83 and became the first ever first-round leader to miss the cut. The same fate was inflicted on Sergio Garcia, the 19-year-old Irish Open champion. He had fired a 62 at Loch Lomond a week previously and contemplated a 59. Here he shot 89 to write his own Scottish lament. But the suffering was virtually universal. A closing birdie 3 for defending champion Mark O'Meara was black humour after a brace of treble bogeys. An 83. The wave was more resignation than appreciation. Last year's defending champion Justin Leonard parred the treacherous final 4 holes for a round of 73. The American was very much in touch. Tom Watson returned to greet familiar territory and a familiar face. Carnoustie 1975 was Ivor Robson's first Open. The story of the journey that ended with Ivor's appointment as honorary starter is weighted with irony.
I used to be so nervous on that first tee. I thought, oh, this is no use. I could play the practice round, I could get along fine. When it came to the first morning, I just could not. My tummy was just so uptight, and I thought, I can't cope with this, I'm giving this up.
He's there for the first match of the day and calls the last. So what keeps Ivor's engine running during his long hours at the pulpit on the first tee?
Well, I don't have any breakfast, coffee, lunch or anything. I just have a sandwich in the evening, mineral water. That's all I have during an event. Because my belief is if you know intake, you shouldn't have any output. Morning, Sherry. How are you? Nice to see you again. Welcome.
Winter or summer jacket?
It's summer jacket. Summer
Very well.
Very good. What an honour to be the official staff of the Open Championship. For my 25th, there's nothing can surpass this. It's just tremendous to be allowed to carry on doing it. This is game number 11. On the tee, Tom Watson.
Ivor set the then young American on his way 25 years ago, when his look was more Tom Sawyer than Tom Watson. He beat Jack Newton in the last 18-hole Open playoff. But he was helped by a faltering Johnny Miller, who on the 72nd failed to escape from the bunker that is now named after him. That unhappy footnote from a quarter of a century ago was then the most famous final hole capitulation in Carnoustie's Open history. Elsewhere on day 1, Jean van de Velde was working his way round to a 4-over par 75 in the late afternoon sunshine. Style is sacrosanct to the French. He would leave a flamboyant Gallic signature. An embarrassed grin was Tiger's only reaction after some attention from a young lady on the 18th green. No need to be red-faced, though, after a 74. A much more explosive emotional reaction was provided by Santiago Luna, the man who beat Woods in the Spain-USA match at the Dunhill Cup in 1998. His response triggered by an Eagle 2 at the 10th. There weren't too many high fives in a day of high scoring. An Australian would head the leaderboard at the end of day 1. 2-times Masters champion Bernard Langer returned a 72. The average score was over 78. Virtually no one watched a late starting Paul Lawrie, who returned a 73 to be top Scot. Ben Hogan began with the same score when he won here. 6 over could win this, Paul said afterwards. The beast from the east had been a true test for the world's best. While the golfers were left to cope as best they could with traditional difficult Open conditions, which included a few fairways of narrow gauge width, the railways were left to cope with a massive influx of spectators. The R&A, along with Angus Council, helped ScotRail with the scheduling of an Open timetable. 80 trains a day throughout the championship, with specials from Glasgow and Edinburgh. It was a throwback to the golden age when steam made Britain shorter and certainly made Scotland more accessible for those whose passion was the greatest game. Today, train is just another way of getting there. Then, it was the essential method of transport for those who wanted to play the very best.
That was the only way to get to golf courses. And if you look at the map and go to all these old places, there's a railway line virtually alongside every one. St Andrews, the train used to go right into the town. Turnberry, the train used to run right to the hotel. Princes, it runs right into Sandwich, only a mile or so from the course. And then you probably had a horse and cart drag you up to the club.
No such thing needed here. Of all the championship courses, none has a first tee closer to the railway line. That convenience, one of the reasons that persuaded 40,000 people to travel to Carnoustie by rail, over 25% of the total attendance. What the seaside Scots call a challenging breeze was still sneering at the world's finest on day 2. There was also a touch of frost. David Frost, who became the first man to break par. His 69 followed an 80 on day 1. Body language revealed his satisfaction. Two times champion Greg Norman had opened with a 76, but threatened to better Frost's 69 when he reached the turn in 35, 1 under, and then patched together 3 consecutive birdies beginning at the 12th. Then here at the 13th, and again at the par 5 14th. By the time he reached the 17th, Norman was leading the tournament, but there the man who owns his own jet found unwanted airspace.
I mean, I'm going to have to classify that as an air swing. You know, I got a real dose of the true punishment of what it's like, and it doesn't feel good.
Monty felt poorly too. He finished the day joint 21st after a 76. At his post-round press conference, Colin announced that his chance of winning had gone, and that Medina, venue for the US PGA Championship, was now his only opportunity of a major in 1999. Much more relaxed was Jean van de Velde. Putting superbly, he made light of the difficult conditions to record the best round of the day. A sparkling 68, and he led the championship on 1 over par. The Frenchman who learned the game while on family holidays on the Atlantic coast of Biarritz showed how to handle the rather more capricious conditions associated with the northeast coast of Scotland. Anyone breaking 70 had played superb golf.
I'm very pleased, you know. So now it's just a matter of, you know, staying focused to what I have to do and not try to do anything silly or anything that I'm not normally doing.
Argentina's Angel Cabrera also broke 70. A 4-birdie round of 69 for the former caddy from Cordoba. But only just. The man they call the Duck took to Carnoustie like his nickname to water. But it was no good for Nick, a 79, his worst score ever in the Open, and he missed the cut for the first time. He was joined in the out tray by Jose Maria Olazabal, still suffering from a knuckle injury, self-inflicted at the US Open. The Masters champion departed, as did the 1998 US PGA champion Vijay Singh. None of the 4 amateurs made the cut, so no silver medal in 1999, despite the amateur dramatics here by reigning British champion Graham Storm. The family of England's young Scotland were right to be proud after their bairn's performance, despite a missed cut. Jesper Parnevik had 3 bogeys, but 3 birdies were the antidote. Antihistamines were what he really needed. A severe hay fever attack almost forced his withdrawal, but a 71 kept him a sniff away from the leaders. Carnoustie was no respecter of its previous conquerors. Tom Watson, with 5 Opens and 8 Majors, bowed out. Gary Player at 63 would move on to Royal Portrush to finish 3rd in the British Seniors Open. Sandy Lyle departed, but he wasn't the only player who was thinking white flag. Patrick Schuland had a 72, but was not the first or last to struggle down the 6th, Hogan's Alley. Ben Hogan won what turned out to be his only Open at Carnoustie in 1953, causing what came close to pandemonium. Thousands turned out just to watch him practice.
Hogan set the town alight, and he was this mystical figure, the Iceman cometh. And he arrived and played quite beautifully and won. I'm sorry he didn't come back again, but then the myth might have been destroyed and he might have not qualified and somebody would have said, they are only ordinary.
A presidential welcome was Hogan's greeting on his return to New York. That year, the wee Iceman won the 3 majors he entered. Only one player in the modern era causes Hogan-esque hysteria. The flashing blades of the Tiger had worked well enough in the first 2 rounds. No woods for woods. It was part of the game plan. In the opening 36 holes, the driver barely left the bag, and he was 3 shots back.
Looking pretty good. Those guys who are 2 and 3 over have a long way to go and a lot of holes to play.
36 or maybe 40. Now surely it was time for the big names to elbow past the pacemakers. Parnevik, Woods and Norman, possibly Leonard too. Few had expected Van de Velde to be in front by day's dusk. Another lively, buffeting day, but not, in the language of the locals, a real wind. When the birds walk, it's rough, say the Scots. But there was most definitely a buzz everywhere. Norman and Woods had been drawn together, but the Carnoustie volunteers had already been smitten by the foreign challengers.
That was good. Was that fine?
That's fine.
I don't think you have time to.
No, it's a wee bit tight. Just a wee smidgen. Right, I want to have
the blood.
Oh, I want. No, it's too loose.
The first lady who ever went out, she was on a practice round, and it just so happened she was walking behind Payne Stewart. She'd got their match, and she says when they got to the 10th, they were all having sandwiches and coffee. And then when she got back, she actually got a kiss from the players as she came off, and she actually rang me up in the evening to thank me. She thought it was so. She just had a wonderful day.
Hi. Hello. Wallace Fife. I have match number 38, so I presume that's nothing doing today.
No, you've actually got match number 35 because 3 matches at the start were dropped off because of the number of qualifiers. So you
that's the Tiger.
Just wait. You're not going to faint, are you?
It's the Tiger.
Yeah.
The Tiger and Norman.
It's actually Tiger Woods and Greg Norman. No.
Here we go. All the best. Wallace is the name. All the best to you. Thank you.
Wallace in the deep waters with the Tiger-Shark pairing. It would be magical for him, but not necessarily for the players. Huge galleries followed the match, but Wallace wouldn't be marking Woods down for any birdies. Norman had birdied the first, dropped shots at the next 2, and then Hogan's Alley became Norman's conquest. He was still in contention for a 3rd Open title.
It's not the green, technically, Tiger.
The Australian was focused, and so was Wallace. His hole-by-hole scoring was the first link in a long, complicated but superbly efficient chain. At the end of each hole, Wallace handed his information on to the next link in the system. It all led eventually via computer link to the internet, as well as the press centre. On the course, there was instant up-to-the-second information to all points, including the on-site studios of the world's media. Schoolboys kept the spectators informed, a passion for the game and a basic understanding of maths, essential for this part of their July curriculum, hard but absorbing work. Back on the links, Norman and Woods were struggling. Woods was holding putts, but for pars, not birdies, and Norman wasn't making a move. Why? Wallace explains.
Greg's catching the sand, isn't he?
6 bunkers in total. This incredible recovery meant he only dropped the one shot at 17, but Norman was back in 38 for a round of 75, and there was a double bogey for a tame tiger at the same hole in a 74.
Hi, Wallace.
That was a great throw.
Is that you?
That was wonderful.
Great. Enjoy
See
it.
what they gave me? See what they gave me? A tiger ball. The tiger's marking it.
On it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and Greg, he kindly autographed it to me. They both came and spoke to me at the end and gave me a ball and said thanks very much.
Oh.
Very manner, very polite.
As was the knowledgeable Scottish crowd, but by contrast there was nothing polite about the display of one of Norman's fellow countrymen back out on the course. Craig Parry was ripping up Carnoustie. He hit 1 iron, 7 iron and 1 iron to the 6th, and by avoiding the rough he followed scores of 76 and 75 with a blistering 67. With half a dozen birdies and just 2 dropped shots, it was the best round of the week so far, and it put Parry right into contention.
I think it's got to rank right up there with the best rounds that I've ever played. I'm only 5'6", but I felt about 6 foot out there the way I was playing.
There was more order from the New World. For the first time in the week, David Frost recorded a round that was actually in the 70s, a 71 to be precise. Parnevik had to content himself with the shot of the day at the 6th, but the man who has twice been second in this championship took a 78 that included 5 single bogeys and a treble at the 11th. Fellow countryman and playing partner Patrick Shawland took 77. Both were out of the hunt. Colin Montgomery, having ruled himself out, was creeping back in. This chip-in got him out in level par and 8 over for the championship. He got it to 6 over after 14, but bogeyed 2 of the last 4 holes. And the Scottish challenge appeared to be diminishing when Aberdonian Paul Lawrie dropped a shot at the last to be round in 76 and a 10 over 54 hole total. Top Scot, indeed top Briton, was Andrew Coulthart, the former Walker Cup player from Dumfries. In 1995, Andrew at St Andrews played on Scotland's winning Dunhill Cup side. 2 birdies were offset by 2 drop shots over the notoriously difficult final stretch. Last year, in the 3rd round at Birkdale, the wind had swept Justin Leonard away and out of contention. This time he produced a solid 71, which included 3 birdies and an outward half of 34.
At the end of the day, what you try to achieve is, I think, it's to promote the game, to entertain people. That's what we're here for.
The popular prediction before the off was that Van de Velde would be unable to handle the crumple zone. It was proved wrong. Punctuated with mesmerising recoveries and 23 putts, his round of 70 on Saturday was bettered by only one player. A superb approach at the last left him with this for a 5-shot lead. Wife Brigitte matched her husband's emotional response, lying ahead for the Frenchman, sleep if he could find it, and then the prospect of golf's ultimate adrenaline ride on the final day of the Open. He would take a 5-shot lead into round 4, but some of the big guns were still there, men who knew how to charge. A tough day guaranteed for Van der Velde.
The bottom line is, no matter what, even if I bring 90 tomorrow, I'm going to enjoy it. Maybe I'm going to blow it tomorrow, but it's the first time ever I'm there, so what do you expect?
It's nothing to do with golf, it's all about what's in his head right now. He'll learn an awful lot about himself, and we'll learn an awful lot about Jean Van der Velde tomorrow.
Anyone who's got a lead like that has got to sleep on it. You know, that's not easy to do. I remember when I won the Masters in '97, it wasn't exactly an easy night's sleep, and I had a 9-shot lead.
Morning.
Morning.
Day 4, and Carnoustie was ready for another helping of the unique atmosphere and inevitable excitement forever twinned with the last 18 holes of the Open Championship.
Ideal morning for golf. Yes, we've been very, very lucky.
And the wind had dropped considerably. Conditions were benign.
And we're ready to go.
How resolute would the French resistance be? Van der Velde, the man from the rugby stronghold of Mont-de-Marsan, was being chased by a heavyweight pack. The opening tee shot helped lead to an opening par. The told-you-sos were expecting early errors. They got them when Jean missed this putt for par at the second and dropped another shot at the third. His partner Parry struck a fine approach to the third. The Australian was pumped up and holed to move to within 2 shots of Van der Velde.
Huh?
You can do it.
Go on. Oh, I can do it, but I want a free drop.
The only thing Frost was able to drop were shots. A double bogey here at the second followed an opening bogey, and his challenge was over. Paul Lawrie, the 30-year-old from Aberdeen, was making an early move. He followed birdies at 3 and 6 with this at the 8th, but at this stage was still 8 off the lead. A strong performance looked likely, the chance of a winning one remote. Along with his playing partner Coulthard, Woods was struggling. No birdies. And although he frequently touched the hole, touching glory would be the hard part. Laurie, who came close to giving up tournament golf 4 years ago, hadn't given up hope of securing at the very least a place in the Masters that comes with a top 4 finish. This master stroke at the 12th led to another birdie, and he was 3 under for the day. Justin Leonard, meanwhile, parred the first 4 holes. And then this excellent chip saved par at the 5th. A birdie followed at the next. After another 2 pars, the 1997 champion found himself tied for second. Angel Cabrera and Tiger Woods needed fast action, and Lawrie was a further stroke behind. Cabrera got it back to 6 over with a birdie at the 11th. But there would be no repeat of the victory by his countryman Roberto Di Vincenzo at Hoylake 32 years previously. Nevertheless, 4th place represented a tremendous performance. In the final 2 ball, it was Parry who was making all the moves. This is the par 3 8th. Laurie had followed a birdie at 12 with a bogey at 13. But a neat up and down here at 14 took him back to 7 over. There were still 5 shots between the Scot and the Frenchman. And 2 between the Australian and Van de Velde, which became 1 after this. A bogey at the 8th, and Van de Velde was 3 over for the championship. The news was good for Craig. Time for Parry to thrust. Now a 2-way tie for the lead. So far, sunshine golf from the man from Victoria's Sunshine State. The recognised superstars were almost out of sight. Tiger was 7 over on the 12th tee. He changed tactics on the final day, but more aggression only led to more frustration. 9 over by the time he left the green. Woods, who had only 1 birdie in the final 36 holes, was out of it. Laurie, here at the 17th, had negotiated the first half of Carnoustie's tough finish with 2 pars. The Scots' previous best finish at the Open was tied 6th in 1993. A birdie at Carnoustie's 71st hole would bring even greater reward. Of the top 6, he and Parry were playing the best golf. At the 10th, Parry answered Van de Velde's birdie at the 9th with one of his own, a Franco-Australian détente. They shared the lead once more. Lawrie, who had missed the cut in 5 of the 9 tournaments he played preceding the Open, holed brilliantly for his birdie at 17, but was still 4 shots back. But at the 11th, Van de Velde had a wrist-wrenching lie. Being in contention on the back 9 of a major was a whole new experience for a man with only 1 win in over 280 events. The Barry Burn lay between Laurie and home. He avoided the dreaded river dance with a member's bounce, a sand dance comfortably the preferred option. Despite a fine approach at the 11th, Van de Velde failed to salvage par. Now Parry tapped in for his and the lead by 1 shot. After 11 holes, the Frenchman's 5-shot lead had been surpassed. Up and down was required by Paul Lawrie at the final hole for a 67 and the clubhouse lead. Aberdeen has a granite image. Appropriate then that a man from that part of the world would play so well on a course recognised by the field as possibly the toughest on the planet. Laurie had this for a 67.
I think the way the course has been set up, I would have to say that it's better than a golf I've ever played. You know, to shoot 4 under par around here, even with no wind, is lovely. I can't see 6 over winning, but you never know. I mean, those finishing holes are just so tough.
The target had been set. Scotland's tough guy would now watch and wait. Justin Leonard dropped a shot at the 10th, and with 7 holes to go, Craig Parry led. Sadly, the 12th was to be his nemesis. His ball was, as you can see, elbow deep, the result of an overambitious second shot. Van de Velde was on his way to a bogey, and the prognosis for Parry was looking even worse. Disaster loomed, and we hadn't reached the scary bit of Parry's self-inflicted nightmare. The troubles of the top 2 indicated that Leonard wasn't out of it. A birdie at the par 5 14th was a prerequisite if he was to have a chance of winning a second Open title. The leader had this for a double bogey. But Parry under-borrowed, and his championship challenge had been undermined. Despite the dropped shot, Van de Velde was back on top and looking down, but he couldn't afford any errors in the run-in. Remember Laurie's clubhouse total of 6 over. Ahead in the 14th, Leonard had this putt to go 4 over and tie for the lead. Paul Lawrie by now was out on the range with coach Adam Hunter. He knew that no one would find it easy to coast home at Carnoustie, even in benign conditions. Meanwhile, the Frenchman had reached the 14th, the easiest hole on the course. And that brilliant approach meant that 2 putts would bring him an important birdie. Ahead at the 15th, the other co-leader was struggling and needed a putt for par. The title was now in John Van de Velde's hands. Pars at 15 and 16 kept him 3 over, while Leonard could not make up any ground on 16 or 17. It looked odds-on that we were seeing the first French victory since Arnaud Massé, who won the Open at Hoylake in 1907. Jean had just 2 more holes to navigate. His second to the penultimate hole. When he avoided trouble, it seemed more than likely that the 85th Open to be played in Scotland would be won by a Frenchman. At the 18th, Leonard felt that he had to have a go from a long way out. his sense of adventure rewarded with water torture. Justin had been Barry burned. Van de Velde was playing with a calm that was to belie what was to come. On the 17th green, he was a picture of composure. With Leonard wet at 18, a two-shot lead would be the least he would take to the 72nd tee. In fact, it was a three-shot lead when the former Open champion failed to hole his pitch at the last. And it was goodbye, you would have thought, to Justin Leonard. Instead, he joined Laurie in the clubhouse at +6.
I got it up down for bogey, but at that point I didn't think it really meant a whole lot.
Surely the championship would soon be heading towards continental Europe.
Well, 18, you know, I stood over it, and I mean, there's no easy tee shot, I think. You know, even being 3 ahead, I mean, what do? You hit a 5-iron down the left, or do you hit something down the right, or do you try to go as far up as you can? And I took that option.
Van de Velde could take as many as 6 shots on the par 4 18th and still win. The driver was a brave choice of club in such circumstances. The ball was dry and lying well. Now surely was the time to wedge the ball back to the sanctuary of the fairway. But that has never been the French way. Safety first is almost sacrilege for those of Gallic temperament.
The option was, do you hit a wedge down the left side and then pitch it on the green and 2-putt it or whatever, 3-putt it and walk off with it? Or do you hit a shot over there and you know, try to move forward with it?
That was the thinking, and this was the D'Artagnan approach. It was here that the tragicomedy began. Most balls that hit grandstands stay there. The result from the ricochet was unfortunate, to say the least.
I didn't need to go for glory. That wasn't something absolutely mad I was trying to do. And, you know, it just came out to be a nightmare.
But John still had shots to spare. Surely good sense screamed for a chop-out, chip and 2 putts. With the neurons apparently misfiring, the humour from here was all gallows, or more appropriately, guillotine. He'd been walking on water, now his hopes would sink in it. After deciding against playing from the water, Van de Velde dropped into more trouble. The French assisted Bonnie Prince Charlie. Van de Velde was now making his own contribution to the tartan cause. Parry looked on, bemused. Now Van de Velde had to hole from sand to secure a French triumph. The crowd, disbelieving and sympathetic, were watching one of the most dramatic finishes in Open history. Parry planned a glorious climax to follow the gore of his miserable back nine. That birdie ensured 4th place. To win, Van de Velde had to emulate the Australian. Now a playoff was assured. Leonard hadn't expected a second chance. Laurie had been 10 shots back at the start of the day. Now could Jean join them? Bravery followed the madness. There were 3 men in a 4-hole aggregate playoff. Angel Cabrera and Craig Parry finished side by side at 7 over par. Greg Norman closed with a 72 for a 9 over total, 1 shot clear of Davis Love, who finished with a fine 69. With the crowd understandably excitable, regrouping and refocusing wasn't easy for the players, especially with the greatest prize in golf on the line. The first hole, the 15th, was played well by no man. Van de Velde had recovered from some errant driving during regulation play, but this time there was no escape. He dropped 2 shots and wouldn't win. It has been said that many a man has become greater in spite of, as well as because of, circumstance. Will that apply to the vanquished Van de Velde? With Leonard and Laurie tied at 1 over, at the 17th, Laurie finally made his move. 225 yards to the pin, using a 4-iron. When Henry Cotton won here in 1937, the rain fell, and the great man handled deteriorating conditions and a strong American representation to win. Déjà vu. Leonard parred the 17th, and Laurie needed this putt for a crucial 1-shot advantage. For the second time on Sunday, he had birdied one of the toughest holes on the open rota, and that meant a 1-shot advantage. For the second time on Sunday, Leonard tried to carry the burn at the 18th, and for the second time in an hour, found the burn.
I'd basically lost the British Open twice in one day, which is maybe twice as hard to take.
Then, for the second time in 15 minutes, Laurie reached for the 4-iron. 221 yards to go this time. The shot of a lifetime. Scotland was to have its first Scottish-born champion since Tommy Armour, who won right here in 1931. The end of an incredible journey. Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Tom Watson and Henry Cotton all won Opens here. Add the name Paul Stewart Lawrie. 2 putts to win the Open. Paul had travelled home each evening of the championship to be with his wife and children. On this Sunday night, he'd arrive with the old Claret Jug.
To birdie the last 2 holes here in the playoff to win is obviously a fairy story.
But this Open will be remembered as much for the Frenchman who lost as the Scot who won. No happy endings for the Van de Velde fairy story, or to a lesser extent, Justin Leonard's.
As bad as I feel, he feels worse.
Sean had the tournament in his pocket. You know, I feel sorry for him. He really should have won. Thankfully for me, he didn't.
There's some worse thing in life, you know. I think I read the newspaper like you all did this morning, and some terrible things are happening to other people. Next time I hit a wedge, okay, you all forgive me.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer for the year with a score of 290, Paul Lawrie.
Paul Laurie's name may have been the last one on people's lips at the beginning of the week. By Sunday, it was the last one Sir Michael Bonalac would announce as Open champion. A Scottish champion, and so it was the flag of St Andrews that fluttered over Carnoustie. Time's passing leads from the final Open of the 20th century to the first Open of the next, at the home of golf, St Andrews, July 2000.
I think every kid dreams about winning the Open, no matter where it is, but obviously here it's extra special for me, being close to home.